Okay, so I've got my Revit model starting to come together. Again, just to show you the 3D view I have that shows most of it. I've got the outside skin of the building done, most of the interior as well actually. So now I want to take that into 3ds Max and set that up for rendering so that I can keep working on it in Revit but have that change, or any changes I make, come through into 3ds Max and render for me. So first step is to get a camera view that you're going to work with. So I'll do that right now. I'm going to make a camera in Revit on the main quick access toolbar. You can click on the down arrow there to get cameras really easily. Don't worry about saving just yet. And then I'm going to do this from the outside looking towards the interior. So I'll place the camera down here and I'm just going to click a point inside the building so that it's deep enough, which means when I look at it back in the floor plan, this view depth is going deep enough into the building to see everything. Now, looking at the views, you can see this is coming as 3D view 4. I'm going to use the navigation wheel and pan so that it's looking from a higher viewpoint. And I might also use look and make it look up higher so that I can see what I want. But notice I'm not going to adjust the field of view. I'm not changing the cropping to change that because I'm going to work with this in Max. So I'll rename this view now by right-clicking, going to rename, and I'm going to call this 3D S Max Import. Just to remind me, this is the view I'm using to work within Max. So with your Max imports, it'll bring the whole model across. So all of this 3D work I've done will come into Max, but it uses one camera view at a time. So it's important to have one camera view that you're going to work with consistently. And I'm going to save this file and then continue setting it up. So another thing that will help you is if you set up your sun, using the sun button there and going to sun settings, I'll set it to still and then make sure it's got a date and a time set. I'll turn the ground plane off at the same time, clicking OK, and then I'll switch it to shaded and also turn the shadows on so I can see what the sun's doing. Right, so at the moment I don't have very good sunlight on the building. I'm going to go to the true north view. And there you can see I've set true north already in this project. So north is correct. That's showing me the direction of north. In the true north view where I have the drawing imported, you can see how I've worked that out. And if you haven't set true north before in Revit, just to show you how to do it, on the Manage tab, you have the option there to rotate true north. And you need to do this in a true north view. Okay, so that's showing the orientation. You can see there pointing to true north. Back in the original site plan, it's at the project north orientation. Okay, so then again, going back to the 3ds Max import view, I'll now adjust that sun angle using sun settings. And so based on what we've seen for the north direction, if I go to a time later in the day, say 5 o'clock in the afternoon, hit apply, and now I've got more light on the front of the building. This is the south facade, so we wouldn't expect to get a lot of direct sunlight there. If I go a bit later, maybe 6 o'clock, it's, well, that's sunset. So in winter, that's not going to help much. Let's go back to summer. So in summer, you're probably aware, you have a wider range of angles for your sun. So we'll try going to the 22nd of December. Apply. Now I've got direct sunlight still coming from just behind, but I'm getting it onto these surfaces. Let's go later in the day. And even later still, in summer you have the sunlight until much later than you do in winter. And there we go. So I've got sunlight now on that facade, which is half the battle when you're trying to set up sun directions in Revit. Okay, so that's done. Now I'll save this again because it can crash when you go to do the next step, and that's to take it into 3ds Max. Okay, so you need to have 3ds Max installed to do this. Once you go on the main menu to Suite Workflows, and then I'm going to choose 3ds Max Design Interior Rendering. Even if you're doing something from the outside, like I am here, choose Interior Rendering, because that'll bring your lights across as well. So Interior Rendering, and then just hit Run. It'll take some time to start the dialogue. Here I'm going to let it make a new 3ds Max scene for me and leave it on will be updated. That's fine. Continue, and it will start 3ds Max for me and make a new file. So that'll take a minute, but you'll see Revit can crash here, so it's really important that you save your file before this step. Okay, so that's while that's happening anyway. I'll just point out those critical steps. So it's a matter of getting the camera view set up initially and having the lighting set up as well, which means not just your own lights. I have put some lights into here, but also the sunlight. Okay, I normally would have had 3ds Max open prior to doing this, but I just wanted to show you how it will open. So there we are, it's opened 3ds Max for me. This welcome screen you can just close if it comes up. And there's the program, so it's open. It's just going to take a minute to bring the data in, and there we go. So that's come in, you can see there the model in 3ds Max now. So the first trick there is to get the camera view. You can see the camera, but it's not showing us the view itself. So a very handy shortcut there is C on the keyboard. Don't choose anything else, just press C and it will set the camera view to the active viewport. Now, having done nothing else, if you go to rendering and then exposure control, you can click render preview to see what it will give you. Don't worry if you get messages about missing map files, just hit continue. Okay, so there you can see it's very dark. If I use the exposure setting down here, you can see that's lightening the render, but it's not showing the sunlight very clearly. So take that back to 15, which is actually the appropriate value for an exterior rendering using the sun. But what's happening with the sun there? In Revit it looked okay. That's my sun. You can see there that even though it's at the angle that I wanted, it's a bit too low. So I'm just been zooming using the wheel there and panning the same way as you do in Revit. I'm switching viewports by right clicking. So if you right click in a viewport, you'll see it'll highlight each of them, it's much better than left clicking. When you left click, it'll select something. So right click to change viewports. I can select my sun there, and then on the motion tab, adjust that time. So it's a little bit too late in the day to get the sun angle I want, so I'll take that back to 6 o'clock. And maybe I can still take the minutes up higher so that it's a bit later still. I don't want to go too late, but I want to try and get some sun on this facade. Just getting some there, that's all right. Okay, and then to render that, I'll go first back to rendering and exposure control, try my render preview again. Again, don't worry about those messages. Okay, there we are. So now I can see something. It is a bit dark because it's using a sun that's close to sunset. So 15 is a good value for full sun, but later in the day the sun's not as bright, so I'll go to say 14 or maybe even 13, which is going to be a better value for this level of sunlight. Maybe 14 is good. Okay, so if you haven't done a lot of photography, might not be clear that the exposure value essentially is setting things like your shutter speed or your f-stop or your film speed to control that level of brightness. Right, so try and think about exposure values, and you can look these up online, also in Revit. And then I'm going to click Teapot to do a full render. Again, ignoring any messages about maps. Oh, so you can do them to begin with in Revit. So anything you assign in Revit will come through into Max. So you can see here, not that clear, but these windows and other things I've put in that have glass are already see-through because those materials have come through into Max. Okay, so it can take some time to render, but it's much faster than Revit will be. Now, I might not wait for that to finish, it'll take some time, so I'll cancel that. And I'll just show you then, if you want to make some changes in Revit and bring those through, you could see that the this balustrade is glass in Revit, but it's not coming through into Max. So I'll look at that in properties. I'll just select it, edit type, and you'll see the baluster is there set to, well, we won't worry about the profile. This one is, it's called glass panel with fixings with glass panel. So? Okay, so in the project browser here, I can get to that baluster. Okay, so in railings there, we've got, again, glass panel with fixing, and when you right click on this and then go to type properties, we'll see how that's set up. Unfortunately, this one doesn't have a simple property I can modify. I know the material, so I just want to show you the material options going back into Revit. So here in materials, I know it's because if we go down here, this glass, you can see, is not clear. And we've got this one too. It's set to be transparent in shading, but if you go to the appearance, you'll see, well, that one's actually clear. What about this one? Yep, there we go. So here's your problem. This glass material is not clear in Revit. So that's a simple thing to change. Replace, find a different material, glass, and I'll just go for clear glass. There we go, double click, and now that's set to be clear for rendering. And a good way of checking this actually is if you go to realistic in Revit, that'll show you the render materials. And there we are. So you can see it's clear there. I know then that it'll be clear in Max. So I'll save that file again, and then back to Suite Workflows, 3ds Max Design Interior Rendering, run. So this is the main thing I wanted to show you. When you've made your changes, instead of choosing New 3ds Max Scene, you can either go to Existing 3ds Max Scene or Active Max Session. If it's open, it'll show you the file that's open, so you can choose it, hit continue, and it'll bring it into that file. Okay, so there we are. Now you can see it's gone back to the way it was before. So C on the keyboard to set the camera view again. I'll choose the sun, and I'll have to remember that I changed that date and time because it's using the setting I had in Revit. We're back to 6 and a bit later. So let's have a look in realistic there. Okay, so the only problem now is that that material isn't updating properly. So a final thing to check is in the material editor here, using the eyedropper, I'll pick that material, and you can see it's still got that generic material that Revit originally had. This is a common problem in Max, but you can simply change this to here, the same clear material. So clear white or clear white, either will do. Okay, so notice they're all changed here now. Right, so I'll save this file, and that's another important thing to remember. Once you've linked it into Max, it's a separate file. You need to save that as well as your Revit file. So really important that you do get this saved once you've linked it. And now, if I render this again, the exposure setting's already been done, so when it renders, you can see the lighting's already set to the right level, and now it'll bring in that change to the material. Okay, so remember, it's close to sunset. It shouldn't be that bright if you're thinking it's not bright enough. You could make it brighter easily just by adjusting the exposure, but if you wanted to give that effective sunset, then you wouldn't necessarily do that. Again, the important thing is getting those changes to come through. It's a little bit technical, but once you get it working, it will keep updating. Okay, so it'll take some time to render, but you can see there, if we zoom in, these are clear materials, and that's part of the railing there, you can see, which has a clear material as well. Might cancel that, and then back in exposure control, I'll take that exposure value down, and you can see there it's changing the brightness. Maybe I'll do it fairly bright and render so it's a bit clearer. Okay, so it's a bit of a process, but once you get it linked, then you can keep working in Revit, bring the changes across, and hopefully get more familiar with the rendering approaches in Max. Okay, so there we are. You should be able to see then that again is a bit clearer with the glass, and well, anything else we do in Revit comes through. Cool. Right, so I won't finish that one there, but try to link it as soon as you can. The sooner you do it, the better it'll be.